The meta for Rocket League to this day is constantly evolving.
Back to first killer! That was ridiculous!
Just when we think there's no more new mechanics to be discovered, bam, there's another one that pops up out of nowhere. This crazy mechanic, the Licks jump, was literally discovered a month ago and has already reached the point where a bunch of pros are considering learning it. It may not become the meta for a while, or most effective tactics available, since it's still so new, but it just goes to show how we've got a long way to go before we even come close to the true skill ceiling of this game. So, it's about that time of year again. In this video, I'm covering 5 mechanics that will become the meta in 2022. The first mechanic is what I'll call laser double taps. We all know what double taps are in Rocket League. Hit the ball once off the backboard and then again into the net. Very basic fundamental mechanic that many players even at the champ level have gotten consistent. It's incredibly useful because as a defender, it's so much harder to read a ball that's coming down at you from straight above rather than a normal aerial shot from out in front. But at this point, most double tap setups at a high level get shut down because they just know how to defend them. Players are often positioned on the backboard, so when the attacker tries to rebound it, it just gets cut off. Either that, or they'll do what's called defending like an attacker, where they basically read the double tap itself, but clear it to the corner instead of own goaling, obviously. The main issue with normal double tap setups is that the initial first touch is almost always a soft one. It kinda has to be soft in order to make the finish easy to read. Even in pro gameplay, you see players start to hover and feather their boost as they're approaching the ball for their first touch. And because of this, it gives the defense that extra bit of time to 1, read the initial touch from the attacker, and then 2, reach it and prevent the shot from happening. So even though double taps are deadly, they still get saved a lot of the time. And that's where this mechanic comes in. We've reached a point in Rocket League where top players are so good mechanically that they don't actually need that extra bit of time to readjust to slam it into the net. It definitely makes it easier when you get a soft first touch, but it's not required. Some select pro players already do this on some of their double taps. They'll laser the setup touch straight to the backboard as hard as they can and then try finishing it off. It makes it way harder to score, no doubt, but if they do it successfully, it's near impossible for the defense to save. But you'll notice most pros still don't do this. They take their time anyway, and a lot of the time, it does get cut off. What they don't realize is that where it's possible to score a normal double tap, it's also possible to make it a laser one. It's just way harder to do, but that hasn't stopped pros in the past from learning certain mechanics. Try it for yourself. Learning laser double taps is definitely way harder than you'd think. It's like relearning the double tap entirely. It's so difficult. But at the same time, you can immediately see how it's entirely possible to get consistent. If players just realize how far they are from perfecting them, I truly believe laser double taps will become commonplace in pro gameplay sooner rather than later. The second mechanic is wall dashes. A lot of you guys have probably seen this or heard me talk about it in previous videos. It's a mechanic that was discovered more than a year ago, but really started being implemented in this season of RLCS. Players like AJ and Atomic have especially been using them in their games, but it's not quite the meta yet, I'd say. At this point, I think most pros know it's pretty clear that this mechanic is useful. It's just a matter of learning and implementing them. Those that have been trying to implement them have already scored some goals in competitive matches because of them. It's not usually as clear-cut as catching up to the ball to dust someone to it and then scoring off of it, but a lot of the time it's used to get like an extra demo or take a 50. A couple weeks ago, Atomic just did one in RLCS to get a demo that resulted specifically in a goal because of that demo. It was definitely overshadowed by the fact that this was an embarrassing own goal in RLCS, but that own goal would have been saved if Atomic didn't demo that third defender. This is probably the most prime RLCS example I could find so far, but I'm sure there are many more to come. Even I've been personally using wall dashes in my games. I don't normally chain them with no boost like these players are doing, but it's pretty convenient to help get your momentum going faster after landing on a wall. The only issue is that chaining them together can sometimes be risky or difficult, and if you mess it up, it slows you down a lot. But at the very least, doing 1 or 2 isn't really risky, so there's no harm, and it gets your momentum going faster than it would have if you didn't. The reasons for its usefulness is very clear. All that's left is for pros to get comfortable. And by the way, if you're enjoying the video, I invite you to subscribe and turn on notifications. It only takes a second, it really helps me out, and you'll be notified about my weekly uploads every Monday morning. Next up is ceiling flip resets. This one I'm really excited about. The era of flip resets being used only from solo play setups is completely over. We've now entered a new stage where flip resets are used in the most obscure scenarios, normal aerials. For the longest time, flip resets were boxed in their own zone of territory. Self pops from the ground, air dribble setups, and maybe for some of the most mechanically gifted players, from redirect passes. But at this point, some pros have transcended that. It's starting to become a normal occurrence for pros to go for flip resets from normal aerials or clears from the opponents. The way these players achieve flip resets from normal aerials is by bouncing it off the ceiling. Up until recently, there hasn't really been a widely known way to get a flip reset from a normal aerial. If you try to hit it straight on with your wheels, it would just bounce too far away to reasonably do anything with it. However, if the aerial is high enough, you can actually bounce it off the ceiling, so it'll bounce right back to you, and now you can continue your aerial attack, but with a dodge available. It's, as you can imagine, a very difficult mechanic to pull off, but when it is done, it's incredibly hard to read. I tried it myself for a while, and it's extremely satisfying when you get it. I just don't think I'll be doing it in any of my own games sometime soon. Through the past few months, ceiling flip resets have started to be used more and more, but once again, only by a select few players. Not everyone is practicing these yet. We saw this happen more than ever before at the recent RLCS Fall Major in December, and considering how many flip resets were scored in this exact way from that event alone, I'm sure this is something we'll continue to see way more of from here on out. Up next is corner double taps, particularly on redirects. A really common situation players find themselves in is this right here. You notice your teammate has an opportunity for a big uncontested clear, so you creep upfield a little bit to make yourself available for a pass. And sure enough, he passes it directly to you. In this instance already, what almost everyone would automatically do is go for a shot directly on net, a normal redirect. This can be pretty deadly if you place it extremely well, but these get saved a lot of the time. Another option could be going for a redirect double tap off the backboard. A bit more complex, a bit harder to save, but still not the best option. We see pros do this all the time in game, and they do score off of it a decent bit since it's still pretty deadly. But the third option is by far the most effective. You already know it, a corner double tap. This is so incredibly hard to defend. Not only is this a really hard bounce for the defense to read, but even if they do read it, they're still probably getting dusted to it since the attacker is already in the air. It's like they're pre-jumping the read while everyone else has to read it normally. They already have a head start. The easiest way to defend it is obviously by having someone in the corner ready for it. But that almost never happens because it just doesn't make sense to have a defender way over there away from the net just in case of this very specific attack. Unless, of course, they're just in that position on rotation. The reason why this is so convenient for the attacker is because they're double tapping it off a surface that is way far away from where the defenders sit, leaving almost no chance of it being intercepted midway through. But more importantly, the nature of the corner itself makes it so the ball bounces right back mid, so it's not even that hard of an angle to score. Someone like Monkey Moon is very good to watch for this. He's already gotten multiple clips of him using the corner to his advantage, and he's incredibly good at reading the bounce. Just like before, there's no doubt this is way harder to read than a normal double tap, but the benefits of it are huge and absolutely worth it if you can get it down. The last one, and definitely my favorite, is what I'm calling the dummy play. This one isn't really a mechanic of what you do with the ball, but rather what you don't do with it. The name dummy play comes from traditional sports, particularly soccer or football. A player passes it to their teammate, but that teammate actually lets the ball roll through their legs to someone behind. It's very effective and very impressive when it's pulled off. And the same idea can be used in Rocket League, but obviously not in the exact same situation. In order to do that exactly, you'd have to have 3 players pushed up all the way, which obviously is way too risky. But that same idea of faking the ball just to create space or gain a little more ground is absolutely possible in Rocket League, and in way more situations than you think. In a situation where the ball is popped up in the air and the attacker is clearly the closest to the ball, it's easy to see it as a free aerial. The opponents definitely aren't going for it because they would clearly get dusted to it and there's not really any point. Even in Pro Rocket League, in this situation, almost every single time, the player committing would continue as normal and go for a solo play. But what this player doesn't realize is that there's an even bigger opportunity to score from here. Not in front of them, but behind. What this player could do is call out that they're faking and allow their teammate behind to go for the real shot, since they can be so much more deadly from their position. If they do, this play goes from a decent scoring opportunity to a massive one. Another common spot this could be used is on double touches. One player sets up the double touch, but immediately calls out the fake. Then the player behind pre-jumps the read, already trusting that their teammate will leave it. If executed properly, this is nearly impossible to defend. It's essentially a calculated double commit, and if you've ever tried defending a double commit that actually goes on target before, you know how hard they are to read. There have been a few plays done like this in RLCS, but relative to its usefulness and how often they could be used, this type of play has a long way to go before it's perfected. In almost every RLCS game, even today, you can usually find at least one scenario where a dummy play could have been used. But still, we haven't seen much progression with them yet in pro play. All it takes is a bit more self-control and practice with these situations. Right now, it's pretty rare to see a dummy play executed to score a goal, but if players learn this, I really believe it'll become a regular occurrence in professional Rocket League. Those are my predictions. If you agree or disagree, feel free to let me know in the comments. I'm really excited to see if pros start implementing this stuff. I know most of the stuff I talked about last year ended up being used more. If you enjoyed, be sure to click the like button and subscribe. It really helps me out and only takes a second. Other than that, thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.